Okay, good evening everybody, and welcome to the Team 3R race series. The Tour of Sicily Stage 6 tonight. Now we had 18 riders in the app signed up, so I'm hoping in this last 5 minutes a few more will join. Let's see what happens. But this should be a good race. It's a cracking course, as you can see from the profile. We get a gentle introduction, and then after about 5-6k we start the climbing. But the fly in the ointment could be that big downhill after this first hill. And don't forget folks, there's a bonus point on offer just after we crest that first hill. So I'm expecting riders to go for the bonus point. And the question will be, can they hold that gap until they get to the base of the next climb? Because then I think the climbers could stay away, but we'll have to see what happens. You'll also notice it's a fairly long downhill to the finish, so the climbers have got to break away and get a decent gap, otherwise they'll be caught on that final downhill. So it should be an exciting stage. I've ridden this myself a while ago. I posted a video on YouTube about it, but it's a good course. It's a cracking ride. I'd expect it to be done in about 1:15, 1:20 by the front of the races, and the guys at the back about 1:30. But we'll see. It could well be quicker than that. Now I'm not racing tonight, as you can see. I'm in my World Bicycle Relief t-shirt. I've had too busy a week, and I was climbing last night, so pretty sore and pretty tired. So I'm going to do the commentary, but of note, you will notice that there's a few ZMS cameras covering the event tonight as well. So as well as me live streaming it, I think Mike Lister is also live streaming it. I don't know what the interest is, but I welcome it. Thank you very much, everybody, especially ZMS and Mike, for continued coverage, because hopefully it will lead to more contestants for the second half of the event. I mean, the league is certainly not over yet. There's everything to play for with me offering up bonus points, and with a mixture of some flat rolling. Well, there's one more flat stage, there's a rolling stage, there's a couple of hillies, and there's a huge stonking mountain stage to come. So it's going to be exciting, and I think everybody has a chance. It's not over yet by any means, because I think there's a lot more to come, a lot more excitement to come, and we'll see what happens tonight. I have to say I'm really looking forward to tonight, because I think this could be one of the key stages of the whole competition. The profile lends itself to that, so we'll see what happens. Now there's all the regulars here. There's Tim, who's leading the competition at the moment. There's Luke. Luke Jeffries, my teammate from Team 3R. There's Mike Wareham. There's Paul Pudell from OTR. He's currently second place, but he's the strongest climber, more than likely, in this group. So we'll see what happens. We've got a couple of new riders, I think, tonight. Mr. Wadey, I don't think he's ridden before. I'd need to check. And Mr. Pace. I don't recognise that name either. So I'm hoping that everybody gets off. Now, obviously, I have to get on the bike. I have to turn the pedals. So I'm going to do that now, and then we'll rejoin the action once the race is underway. Okay, that's the race underway. let's get back to coverage. Okay, come on, there we go. So there you can see Paul's out the front already, although the group's together. So let's find a middling view, zoom out a little bit, and there we go. So it looks like everybody's together apart from Mike. Mike is there he is. So everybody's together. Obviously the ZMS cameras are at the back, which you'd expect them to be. But I don't see anybody breaking away on this first rise. I think the group will probably stay together. We may have a small break. You may have one or two dropping off the back on this first rise, but somehow I think they'll get back together and all head to the climb together. At least I hope so. I'm going to swing the camera round and I can get it working. Whoops, a daisy. There we go. And let's get a front on view. Now I don't know anything about this Pace. I hope he's not a flyer. Who shouldn't be in the competition, but we'll have to wait and see. Paul has joined him anyway, so okay. Okay, I'll message. Okay, so we have Pace pulling along on the front. Paul has tried to join him, but I'm hoping he lets Pace ride away because he's not part of the race. This is a shame when this happens, folks, and I apologise. Obviously, I can only check we can ban riders now, but I can only do that prior to the event starting. If I know that a rider is above 3.2, we now have the facility to be able to ban them. I wasn't notified that Pace has joined and I didn't spot him myself earlier, otherwise I would have checked. So basically, what I'm hoping is that he doesn't interrupt the race. I mean, you can see Paul is not on his wheel, so I'm going to let this one go. Hopefully Pace will beggar off into the distance and not interrupt the race. That's my hope anyway. As you can see, Paul's being caught on this downhill section, which you would fully expect. This is kind of what we expect. Now Wadey, I think he's definitely a 3.2 rider, even though he's new to me. I recognise the name. even though I'm not sure if he's ridden one of our events before, but I recognise the name. So this is a fair group now. This is where the race really is. Providing pace stays out of the rest of the race. I mean, the good thing is that once we start on the climb, there's no drafting effect going to take effect on the climbing. So we should basically have a free and fair fight. I'm going to ask pace to leave again. Okay, so he's getting involved in the racing. He will be banned from any future races, folks. He will not even be able to join our events. So say goodnight to him in this event. Because he's obviously able to see the messages on screen. There's no excuse for this whatsoever. And to be honest, not only should they be banned from individual events, but they should be blacklisted on RGT as well, because this is deliberately spoiling the event for others. And very, very annoying. But as organised, there's not an awful lot we can do about it after the event. As I say, RGT are going to bring in tools for organisers. I know it's in the pipeline, but at the moment, if I'm notified, we can actually stop riders like this taking part in our events, and I will do that. I mean, we should be focusing on the race, not focusing on a rider spoiling it. But you can see, as expected, all the major players, apart from Mike Wareham, are actually part. Oh, and Gary Birch is riding with Mike at the back. Now we'll catch up with them as soon as we get to the climb. I just want to watch what happens with this pace guy. Like I say, once we hit the climbs, then it shouldn't matter, because riders will ride at whatever pace they're capable of, and drafting won't take effect. I mean, you can see he's pulling them along now, so he is actually disrupting the race. Because he's leading them out. And that's really sad that a rider would do that. You know, it really is. Okay, so they're about to start the climb, so I'm going to drop back now and find out what's happening behind. So we're going to drop back a little bit. There's Gary Birch and Mike Wareham. Now they've obviously dropped off the back. So they're 140 metres behind. Now, depending on whether they're the bigger riders or not, I know Gary's joked before that he's carrying a bit too much weight to be a climber, and I think Mike is much the same. So, yeah, you'd expect them to struggle now that we're coming into the climb. Although they're putting out, look at the wattage they're putting out. They're putting out good wattage, so they're not hanging about. And there you can see Luke. Now Luke's a fairly decent climber, so he's a bigger lad, but he's a fairly decent climber. So the guys in front of him must be going really hard. Oh, he's not that far off. You can see he's just behind Chris Little. I think it's John Wadey. We'll check up on that later. You can see Tim's doesn't particularly like climbing, but he's a strong all-round rider. So expect him to at least contest this first bit of the climb. It isn't really until you get into the second half of this climb where you will notice the breaks happening, I think. Although I think Paul's having a real dig here. There's Steve Noble. He's a strong climber. And there's Paul. And hopefully pace has gone off into the distance, because obviously, I mean, if you look at the wattage he's putting out and maintaining, you know, 6 watt kilos, and he's hovering around that figure fives, over fives, for extended periods. He's obviously way too strong for this group. So hopefully he will pull out a huge gap and we won't see any more of him, unless he's idiotic enough to slow down once he gets to the flatter or downhill sections. But hopefully we're now seeing the race proper, and I'm not even going to mention pace anymore unless he gets involved again. And we're certainly not going to highlight him. I think Steve Noble will give Paul, will push Paul. It was a good contest between the two of them a couple of rounds ago, and Paul came out on top just. And when I say just, we're only talking a few meters. So they've evenly matched, and I think that will prove to be the case today. As I say, Wade is an unknown element to me. So if we get this group staying together, they're going to push each other on, and this could upset the standings, because excuse me, just had my tea. This could upset the standings because Tim is a good, strong, all-round rider, but on hills like this, the correct tactic is exactly what's transpiring here, for the climbers to go off and gap him and try and maintain that gap. I'm pretty sure Tim will try to come back at them when the gradient eases. So they've got to try and gap him and maintain the gap. And it doesn't just need to be one rider that does that. It needs to be 2, 3 or 4 riders, so that they push Tim further down the field. And then the riders in front can obviously gain points on him. That's the only way they're going to pull back his lead. Plus the fact that there's a bonus point available today, which we capture that by watching who goes under the halfway banner first. And the halfway banner is situated, I'll just get my mouse on the screen and you can probably see, the halfway banner is about here, where you can see my mouse pointer at the moment, which is just after you crest the first mountain or first hill. So you've got to make sure that you don't sort of like ease right off once you reach the top of the hill. You've got to keep the power going to make sure that you're the first under the banner, and that rider will gain an extra minus point, which will put him the same as the leader will get for winning the race. So it's well worth having. We may extend that to 1, 2 and 3 later on. I don't know. What I'm trying to do, folks, is I'm trying to be fair to everybody. I mean, I will do the same on the flat stages so that riders like Tim have the opportunity to gain extra points. Not that he needs it, but it's the only fair way to do it, to make sure that this bonus points happens on all the stages and not just on the climbing ones. But what I'm going to do is try and close up the leaderboard. Now you may say that's artificial, but it's not. I'm just going to reward extra points so that people have, you know, they've got something to work for. Because if one rider is too far out the front, then there's nothing really encouraging the other riders to you know, to go hell for leather. whereas now the league standings are such that there's no reason why the climbers, and particularly Paul Pudell, with help, can't close up the gap to Tim. And that's my hope, that we will see a change in the overall. But Tim's maintaining the gap. Let's just drop back to him and have a look. But Tim's maintaining the gap at 39 metres, and he's got Luke joined him. Now Luke, I would say, is on a par with Tim as far as climbing goes, because Tim, although not a climber and probably a bit heavier than Luke, I think in terms of power output they're probably on a bit of a par. But you can see that the gap is actually coming down, and that's because the climbing has ceased. They're more or less on the, well, I'm saying ceased, it's 4% now. Whereas once they reach the red and orange bits, it gets that bit steeper, so the gap will grow again. But they've got to try and stay away. They've not got to allow Tim to keep constantly pulling them back. So I think, while not blowing up, the riders have to try and push on when the gradient eases. They've just got to put in that extra bit of effort when the gradient eases, and try and stay away, try and maintain a bit of a gap. 20 metres is definitely not enough, because Tim can pull that back in no time on the flat or downhill section. So, you know, if the rider's up front, and I'll just drop back and we'll see what's happening behind. Chris Little, you can see, has been gapped now. So he's dropped back 90 metres from the small group in front of him. And then we've got a fairly large gap to Mike Wareham and Gary Birch. Gary's just I don't know where Gary is. Oh, there we are. Gary's just behind him. So these two could do well to sort of like stay together. And we'll see what happens. I mean, Chris is looking good. He's got a nice cadence going there. But you can see that it's all come back together because the gradient has eased. But we're coming now, you know, it's shortly going to change again. The gradient's going to go up. But Paul needs to be pushing on off the front. So let's see if he's doing that. Yes, he is. So correct tactics from Paul. And it'll hurt him. There's no two ways about it. But I think he can get his recovery. I think he needs to work overtime on the hills and get his recovery on that big downhill section. But he really needs to pull out a good gap to make this stick. And I think this first climb is key to the route, because the second climb you can clearly see, and again I'll use my mouse to highlight it, starts here and goes up, but then it sort of like levels off here, this green section, and then you've got this orange section, which, yes, it's a climb, but it's the kind of climb that Tim can big ring, and so he's not going to get gapped that much on this section. So really they need to be getting a good gap on this first climb, whiz down this downhill. I mean, really put the power down on the downhill to maintain as much of a gap as they can, and then really hammer up this second mountain, because they need a really good gap by the time they get to the top of it here. This section here will allow Tim to come back, and then the downhill finish is going to be really fast and furious. That's my prediction anyway. We'll see how it plays out. So it's good to see more than one rider pushing off the front. I mean, I expected Steve to be pushing the pace along with Paul, and it's nice to see Wadey joining them. So good racing. Let's again move backwards and and watch the gap on the road. Now what we're looking for here, folks, is we're approaching the steeper section very quickly, and I'm really hoping that the gap extends here as we get to this steeper section. You can see Crichton pulling these two riders, Tim Cook and Luke Jeffries, along. But let's see what happens. Let's just check behind them, see how far behind. And I think Chris is out of it now. I don't see him coming back to... he's maintaining his 105-metre gap. So yeah, I won't write him off yet. He could well end up coming back to the riders in front. But it's a tough ask when you're in no man's land like he is at the moment. Although he is pulling Luke back, so maybe he can close it up a little bit. And then I think it's fair to say that Gary and Mike are just doing their own ride. They're certainly out of it in terms of the top positions, but they're doing their own ride. So the gap's growing, as you can see. It's now gone out to 100 meters, and it's going to grow because there you go. These guys are pushing on. Ignore the, I will mention it just one more time. You can clearly see by the figures being put out by Pace at the top of the leaderboard, the 6 watt kilo, that he's no right to be in this race and will be banned from all future Team 3R racing. And in fact, I will even ban him from the open category races as well. So he won't even be able to take part in those races, because he's been asked to leave and hasn't done so. Anyway, you can see that Paul, let's just go up to them, have now pulled out a small gap of 20 meters on Wadey. So Paul and Steve are staying together. I mean, Steve's looking really strong here, and it'll be interesting to see whether he can overturn the last results that they had on the hill, which was where Paul just pipped him. It'll be interesting to see whether Steve can turn that around and just pip Paul, especially with the 1 point on offer. My money would still be on Paul to take the bonus point, but he needs to time his effort nicely, because Steve's a strong rider, as we saw from the other week, and quite capable of holding him. Interesting battle up front here. I'm a little bit disappointed, folks, that we had quite a few more riders signed up and then they haven't turned up. That just gives me a false sense of who's, how many we're going to have and who's riding. And I'd really like it if riders that signed up would come and take part in the event, except the ones that are clearly over the watt kilos, of course, which we don't want. But generally I can, as I say, I can check riders by checking their past results if I've time. If I've time to check on riders, if you sign up early, I can check the riders, or other riders that know a rider shouldn't be in the race can notify me. Just send me a message, notify me that there's a rider. And this happened earlier on in the series. I was notified that there was a rider signed up that didn't belong in the event, and I was able to get him banned from the event even before we started. So if you notice a rider that shouldn't be in the events, just send me a message and I'll look into it. If he's... There's my alarm going off. Okay, so time to get back on the bike. Turn the pedals. Just bear with me, folks. For those that aren't aware of the system and the way it works, we're using what's called spectate mode to do the commentary and the live view. And you can only spectate for 30 minutes unless you actually get on your bike and turn the pedals. You can only spectate for 30 minutes, and if you don't turn the pedals after that 30 minutes, you're kicked out of the race, which means I would lose complete coverage. So in the past, I've actually forgotten to set my alarms and I have been kicked out. I was kicked out right at the very end of the last one. So I've set alarms tonight all the way through the event, so we shouldn't have any problems there, folks. Commentary will continue right up until the end, and then at the end of the broadcast, or the race, should I say, at the end of the race, I will pull up the RGTDB website and we'll get the results live while everybody's still racing. But obviously you're going to be able to see who wins the race live anyway, with the commentary. So these two are away and closing in on the top of the climb. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly check and see where the rest of the riders are. So they've got a 120 metre gap on Wadey, which is really good. Crichton is just a few metres in front. In fact, I'm saying in front, you can actually see that, let's just zoom out, and no, I don't need to zoom out. You can see that Tim Cook and Luke are joining Crichton. So those three are currently about 300 metres behind the leaders, and that's a good gap to have. If they can go over and really push on, that's a good gap to have. So there you can see Tim struggling on the climb, which is what we expected. He won't mind me using the term struggling. I mean, Tim's what we call a puncher. He's a very strong rider on the rolling hills. On the flat, he's probably unmatched in this series. So he's one of the stronger riders, but when it goes uphill, he won't mind me saying he struggles. And that's where I think this series comes into its own, because I've introduced flat sections, rolling sections, hilly sections, mountain sections. So everybody, any kind of rider, has their day. I mean, Gary's up there when the when we're in the flatter sections. So there you can see Tim has been distanced by Luke as the climb gets near the top. But let's not pace, we don't want him. Here we go. So now we're approaching the banner, and what I'm going to have to do here is swing around so that we can actually see the banner approaching, and let's see who takes the additional point. Now we should be coming up to it any time soon, and it's going to be a close one. You can see these two battling for it. It's going to be very... There we go, and Steve Noble has taken the additional point. So well done, Steve. Yep, very well done. Let's go down and see what's happening behind. So there you can see. Okay, so I've just messaged them. So there you can see. Now this is where Tim could potentially pull back some distance on Paul and Steve Noble. And we're going to watch, the gap's 110 at the moment, as you can see on the screen, and you can see it coming down. So expect Tim to really pull this gap back. I'm going to try and zoom out and see if we can see anything happening on the road. Can we actually get a view on the road? There they're going under the banner. So they're going under the yellow banner together, these three, and they are actually pulling back Tim and Paul, Steve and Paul out front. The question is, how much of that gap are they going to be able to close? I suspect, looking at the way it's coming down, they're going to be able to pull back a few hundred meters here. And you can see that the second hill here doesn't get steep straight away. Yes, it's a little bit steeper there, but then you have this section where you've got this little orange and then even a flatter section before you reach the next steep red section. So there's an opportunity here to continue from the downhill, big ringing it, and get past this first section, and then you're golden until you get to the base of this next steeper climb. So Tim could well pull this gap back significantly if he continues motoring on. But it looks like he's not really... Yes, he's doing 2.7, 2.8, but I would have expected him to go full gas here. Maybe he just doesn't have it. Whereas I can see Paul is actually taking it easy as well. You can see 1.6. Let's just go back up and find him. There we are. See, they're taking it easy, and I think this is a mistake. I think they should be. Yeah, they are starting to push the wattage again now as they're back into the climbing. But on that section where they were going downhill, they should have been pushing maximum watts to maintain the gap, because the gap has now come down to 750 meters. So Tim proved that he can pull back a significant amount of the lead that these two had, and he's going to do that once we get over this this next big climb. And I think we may well see the group coming back together and Steve and Paul not even staying away. Because it's under 500 meters now. Tim's putting in a huge effort, as I said he would on this section here, because this is a short section, this bit of this climb before you reach the orange and green, you can big ring it. I've ridden this course, and you can actually big ring up this section, pushing out big watts, and that's what Tim's doing. There you go. So this section here, you can actually push out he's a smart rider, is Tim. He'll know exactly what he's got to do, and he's keeping the gap manageable. Look, 400 meters. I mean, it's going out now because Paul and Steve are on the relatively well. Let's go up to them. There you go, 3.5% section, whereas Tim's on what's Tim on? He's on the 5.3 section. So that's why the gap is increasing, because they're on the easier part. But once they get, there you go, and they've done so, once they get over that steeper section and onto this easier, where the gradient eases, the gap's going to come down again, because Tim's going to be able to use his power to close the gap. Although having said that, the riders out front are actually reaching the green section, the flatter section. So yes, they will maintain their gap for the time being. Interesting. It's an interesting dynamic because we have Wadey here 300 meters behind, 320 meters behind. So he's in the middle, and I expect Tim and Luke and Crichton to sorry, I can't remember your first name, Mr. Crichton. I think it's Steve, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I expect them to actually join up with Wadey, and the three of them to ride together. It's a bit of an ask. It's a tall ask to close up 200, almost 300 meters, but I think they're capable of doing that. Let's see what happens. But this is where the battle is, and Steve got the better of Paul at the bonus point banner, the yellow banner, halfway point. So he scored the extra point. The way it works, what I did as an experiment in this series, folks, is I used a minus system. So, like, the winner of the race gets 1 point, the second placed rider gets 2, the third place rider gets 3, the fourth place rider gets 4, etc. So the series is based on minus points, not maximum points. So the rider with the least amount of points is the rider that's in front. Now the reason I did it that way rather than the other way around, it was twofold. It's easier to allocate the points for basically if I'm doing it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because the last rider is usually me. I'm the last rider in the thing. So if there's like 10 riders taking part, which I think there are tonight, I'll be riding number 10. I get 10 points. But then it's so easy to give every other rider that hasn't taken part 10 points, the riders that have missed, because every rider that's part of the series gets points every week, even if they don't take part, but they get the last rider's points. So all the riders that haven't turned up tonight, and that could be for many reasons, that could be because they're on holiday or whatever, all get the same points as me as the last rider on the course. I mean, I'm not actually taking part in the event, which is why they get the same points as me. But when it comes to totaling up the rides, it's just so much easier to allocate points rather than going from highest number first and working my way backwards. It's just a lot easier. And then when allocating bonus points, it's a lot easier to allocate -1 point to the leader or to the riders than what it is to try and calculate, okay, he's on 639 points, I need to give him an extra point, 640 points. It's just much easier, and it's a system I will use going forward because it makes doing the spreadsheets and everything else so quick. I can basically post the results very quickly afterwards, although generally I go, because the race is finished so late, I usually wait until the following morning and do them the following morning. But instead of taking me, like it used to do, a couple of hours to sort out all the results and do the tables and everything else, it's just so simple to add a couple of points on rather than adding multiple 10s or 20s or 30s of points onto the existing totals. Anyway, that's my brief explanation of how the point system works, and I think it's working really well. And more importantly, when I post the results, it's very easy for riders, all the riders, to be able to see where they are in the table. This is good riding by these two. They're matching each other stroke for stroke here. They've now extended the gap to 200 meters. but that's over weird. Oh, they've got almost 370 meters over Tim Cook. Now, I personally don't think that's going to be enough. We could well see this all coming back together. I'll call it once we get onto the orange section, but we'll see. If they can pull out a 500 meter gap, that could well be enough. But 400 meters, I'm not convinced that's going to be enough. And Tim has left behind Luke at the moment, but only by 20 odd meters. So there you can see Tim really pushing, and you can see he's going above his FTP when the numbers go red. So he's working hard, as is Luke and Steve here. And Chris is just doing his individual time trial. He'll just be working as hard as he can. By his own admission, he says he's carrying a little bit too much weight to be a climber. But to be fair to the guy, he does well. He's a good all-round rider. He's a strong rider. I've raced against him, and he absolutely cruised past me. So he's not that much of a slacker, I can tell you. And then we've got Gary and Mike bringing up the rear of the race. You can see the pulling back Tim, so the keeping him within sight. 20 meters is doable. They can pull that back on him. So I expect these three to pretty much stay together. The question is really, I mean, Wade is managing to stay 180 meters in front of them, but the real question is, can these two? And now they've pulled out 500 meters on Tim. So is that gap going to come down? Let's again, the way to watch this battle, folks, is to concentrate on Tim and watch the figures just on the leaderboard. So if you look at these 547 meters, 550 meters, you can see that the gap's going out, but Tim's still on the steepest part of the climb. Now when Tim gets to the crest of the climb, which is just up ahead, is that figure going to start coming down quickly, or is the orange section enough to sort of like extend the lead? Yeah, this is pretty fascinating. Now, if Tim finishes fourth on this ride, and Paul and Steve finish in front of him with Wadey, then that can change around the leaderboard a little bit, and the extra point for Steve as well is going to help. Although Steve didn't join up in the initial parts of the race, I believe, so he's a little bit behind points wise, but it's not over by any means at the moment, because if we can get some more riders coming into the race towards the latter end. I mean, we're a rider missing tonight that was supposed to take part. A rider called Adi, or Adel, is it? That joined OTI, who was supposed to be taking part tonight. But if we can get more riders to fill out the gaps, then the leaderboard can change, and it can change dramatically. Yeah, the gap's still going out. So this is good from the riders up front. They're managing to maintain almost an 800-meter gap now. I mean, that's going to come down as soon as this group of riders hit the next section, and Tim will catch up with Luke. And ignore what's happening on screen here, folks, because I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, Tim is not going to allow this gap. He'll quickly close this up once they get onto this next section where the gradient eases. The only reason why he's at the back at the moment is because they're on 5%. But once the gradient starts to ease, which it's going to do very, very quickly, as you can see, it's 4 now and it's coming down, Tim will pull the gap. I mean, it's only 20 meters, but he will pull that back very quickly once the gradient starts to ease, and that's what's happening. It's not difficult to call this, folks, because I've obviously I've done the commentary on the previous races, but I know the riders now. I know the strengths, I know the weaknesses. So that's why when I say, well, they've got such and such a gap, but it can be closed down, I usually know what I'm talking about, because I've covered the races and I've paid particular attention to strengths and weaknesses of the different riders. Now, I'm really, really pleased to see that the two have pushed on at the front and are still putting out decent wattage. And they need to do so. They cannot relax and ease up. I mean, they've got another orange section coming up now, and they really need to push on, because they need a good gap by the time they get to the top of this section. And at the moment it is a good gap, this. And yeah, you can see Paul's really putting in a big effort there, so he's working hard, as is Steve. You can see from the heart rates as well. This is one of the reasons why I ask the leading riders to wear heart rate monitors. You can see when they really I mean, Paul should be wearing a heart rate monitor. If he's listening to me, or if you watch the broadcast, Paul, why aren't you wearing a heart rate monitor? I mean, I know you're a legit rider. You wouldn't be taking part in the series if you weren't, but heart rate monitor just makes it so much easier for me to show the viewers how hard you're working. You can see Wadey is very similar heart rate to Steve, 162, 163. So they're both putting in a similar kind of effort there. And Tim, you can see how hard he's working because his heart rate's even higher. And you can see that he's going into his FTP. The figures are turning red occasionally. So Tim's working really hard as well. But he's done that throughout the series. He's really put in the hard work and deserves his first place, because he's really worked for it. It's certainly not been given to him. He's really worked hard. And you can see Luke is heart rate. He'll be pretty close to his max here. I bet he's not far off. I mean, he's a good deal younger than me, but and that's about my maximum heart rate at the moment, about 180s. So yeah. I mean, Chris is on the flatter part of the course, so his heart rate is not going to be as high. Gary's just cruising. He's just accepted that, yeah, okay, I just have to finish. So he's not going to be pushing it madly. I mean, he's doing good wattage, but he's not going to be killing himself. There's no point. He's not going to catch the leaders. He's left behind Mike. But Mike won't mind me saying, on the hillier courses, he struggles to stay with the group. So, okay, let's go back up to the leaders while I jump on the bike again. You could hear the alarm going off. So that means I have to jump on the bike and just turn the pedals. I'll just switch the view so that I can see my power numbers changing. There we go. Yeah, so what I do is I just look to see that my power and cadence is showing on the app, and then I can climb back off and sit back down in my studio. The bike is right next to where I have my desk and everything else, so everything's together. Okay, so the gap has come down now. It was 1.1 and the gap has come down to 880 meters. And Tim is obviously pushing the pace along now on this section. Let's just quickly check on him. There's Wadey. Now he could stay away. Wadey could stay away from the riders behind, but I have a sneaky feeling Tim's going to catch him. I really do. I think he's going to be much stronger once we get to the top of this this climb. He's already proved his worth when it comes to the flatter and downhill sections. He's a bigger rider, so he can really put out the power on the downhill sections. Now he's opened up a fair gap to these two as well. And I think Luke and I think it's Steve Crichton are going to have to really work hard to pull back Tim Cook, and maybe they're not going to do so. It would have been nice had they been able to stay with him and contested the downhill section with him, but somehow I think that gap's only going to grow once the riders in front. Chris is in no man's land. Although there's an opportunity for Chris to pull back the riders in front, so he could well join Luke in front of him on this next section. Now 1.3 kilometers the riders have got on Tim. Tim's closing in on Wadey, who's just in front of him, 190 meters now, and Tim's closing that gap, albeit slowly, but he's closing the gap, and he's going to close that gap fairly quickly once we get, as you can see, they are getting to the top of the rise now, of the climb. The gradient's easing, so Wadey will initially hold the gap, but I think once Tim gets to the same point, this point here, I think, yeah, it's going to close up. Now, is 1.3 kilometers enough for Steve Noble and Paul Podell? They're on the downhill section now. They've really got to push it. They can't afford to ease up here, and they don't want to be freewheeling. So if you see their power numbers going to zero, like Steve's there, that I'm sorry, but they have to work. Yeah, I know they're probably tired from the climb. They probably need some recovery, but they're very close to the finish. Well, I'm saying very close. How far are they from the finish? Let's have a look. 1.4 kilometers. Now, they should really be pushing on. 1.4 kilometers, kill yourself. Just absolutely, well, they are doing. You can see both of them now are above FDP. And this is the correct tactic. This is the perfect tactic. Well done, Paul and Steve. This is perfect, because Tim's not going to catch you now. Absolutely brilliant tactics. Yeah, you've got it. There we go. 1 kilometre to go. So we're going to stay with these two folks. I'm going to zoom in slightly so that we can see which one of the two takes it. Now, can Steve get the better of Paul this time? He's already beaten him in the bonus sprint. Can he take him in the finish? We're into the last kilometre, 700 metres to go, and Paul's looking strong. So are the points going to be shared here? Okay, we're getting very close to the finish here now. Who's going to take it? Is Paul going to take it? Oh, so close. I think Paul just got it. Okay, let's go back. I think Paul just got it. But I'm going to have to check the RGTDB website for that, because that was close. Steve just put in a sprint on the line and it was so close. Certainly within a wheel. And that's exciting. Okay, so let's just very quickly, I can pull up the RGT while we're waiting for Mr. Wadey to here we go. Let's have a look. Paul just got it by 1/100th of a second. How close is that? I mean, that's crazy. Well done. Very well done. Oh, hang on a sec. Okay, so we're watching Mr. Wadey coming into the finish. Here we go. Good ride, sir. Well done. Just find out where the riders are behind him. There he is. Tim Cook, next rider in. Well done, Tim. Oh, Chris has caught them. Now then, this is interesting. We got a right battle royal going on here. The three of them are really fighting for the next positions. And it looks like, oh, Chris Little is not having it. There we go. Chris gets it from Crichton and then Luke. Brilliant racing, folks. Brilliant racing. Well done. So now we've got a bit of a gap to Gary. So I'm going to pull up the, while Gary's on this section here, I'm going to pull up the website again. So here we go. Let's just, now you should be able to see this live, folks, hopefully. Come on, refresh. There we go. So you can see that Paul's got first, Steve's got second, John Wade's got third, Tim Cook fourth, Chris Little fifth, Scott Crichton sixth, and Luke seventh at the moment, and 2 more riders to come in. Ignore the first place because that's going to get disqualified and removed from the results. So that's a good ride, and well done Tim for pulling out front as well, because yeah, the boys behind weren't that far behind you. Okay, let's just close this website down, and then we can see, there we go, we can see Gary coming in. Yeah, good riding everybody. I mean, I knew it was going to be an exciting stage, and it proved to be so, especially, you know, 100th of a second between first and second. Those two, Steve and Paul, are very closely matched, and Paul has once again just got the better of Steve, but Steve took the intermediate point. So yeah, really good riding, and well done everybody. Okay, this is your last bit of uphill, Gary, and then it's all downhill to the finish there. So you just got this last rise to go up, and here's the 1 kilometre to go banner. Okay folks, don't forget to hit the like button. I really would like to try and grow the channel on YouTube, and the way to do that is to work with the algorithm, which if you hit the like button, that's going to help. And if you're not a subscriber, please consider subscribing. I'm trying to get to 200 subscribers for this series, and I'm a fair way off at the moment. So if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Good effort from Gary, keeping the power up on this finishing straight. Well, I'm saying straight, it's downhill now. It's a good fast finish. Tim's saying he was trying to ride on his own, but yeah, it was really good race. I've enjoyed tonight. It's been good to commentate on because it's finished pretty much how I expected. Well done, Gary. And there's Mike. Well done, Mike. Not far behind. And that's it, folks. That's the end of the race. So it only goes on to say, let's pull up the where are we? Thanks for watching, folks, and if you're not already a subscriber, please hit the subscribe button. Obviously don't forget to like, and we'll see you in the next one. It's been a really cracking race. I've really enjoyed commentating on it. Now I think for stage 7 we're onto the rolling course. I'll confirm that shortly with everybody, but we'll see you in the next one. Stay safe everyone. Thanks for watching. Good night.